Hello, namaste, assalamu alaikum, welcome to Good for Us. And today we're going to discuss Sri Lanka versus Pakistan, the test series that's about to begin in a couple of days, right? Where Pakistan, a team that genuinely thought they were going to beat Australia in Pakistan, lost the series and now sitting fourth in the World Test Championship. This was possibly their best chance of winning, of getting into the final for the World Test Championship, and they kind of blew it against Australia, in my opinion, because I'm a Pakistani, so I get a bit too emotional about these things. And then Sri Lanka pulling out a victory against the same team in their home conditions because they used their brain and realized we should use our strengths against the other team rather than just saying let's just make it flat, and then just let's see what happens, right? But yeah, Aaron, how you doing, man?
Yeah, good to be honest, Asjad. That's possibly a contender for the most passive-aggressive opening to a Cricket for Us video ever. Please do make your feelings on that Pakistan-Australia series more clear, mate. But no, in terms of this series, again, it's going to be an interesting one, isn't it? With Sri Lanka in particular, because that victory against Australia, not the series victory, but the innings victory in the second test, has almost come out of nowhere. And again, they've got some selection headaches, and we'll probably discuss that in due course with regards to a certain left-arm off-spin bowler, but I just look at this series. Obviously, for Pakistan, this means more because there is the World Test Championship factor coming into play. But it's going to be a tough series. And they are now playing against a buoyant Sri Lanka side who will have confidence. They've gone out and beat Australia, who absolutely hammered England over the winter, have been fantastic in the World Test Championship themselves. And also, there is that left arm off spin factor, which Sri Lanka do exploit quite brilliantly in home conditions. So bring it on, Asjad. I think it's going to be a great series.
It definitely will. You talk about left arm off spinners, right? So many options for Sri Lanka. It's outrageous, right? Let's forget left arm off spinners. Let's just think of spinners. They've got Mendis. They've got Jairo Karama. They've got Embuldinia, who wasn't even playing this game because he was playing the tour match against Pakistan, right? You've got the guy who just took 12 wickets on debut, Prabhat Jayasuriya. They've got so many. They potentially have Wanindu Hasaranga as well. They haven't even announced their squad yet. Okay, and it's like, yeah, their spinners are probably going to take Pakistan for a ride, right? And from the Pakistani perspective, they've in my very little knowledge, I used to say Yasir Shah, why is he in the Pakistan side? But then I've seen who the other spinners are in the Pakistan team. I'm so happy Yasir Shah is back, right? The leg spin factor of what he was able to do in spin friendly conditions cannot be taken for granted. In the UAE, this guy was sensational. Okay, when we shifted back to Pakistan or anywhere outside Pakistan, it's not been that great. But UAE was his fortress, for lack of a better term. And Sri Lanka is not the same, but Sri Lanka is more conducive to spin bowlers, and he's going to be an absolute peak bowler for Pakistan. He needs to play number one both matches, and he needs to be the leading player from a Pakistani bowling perspective because spin will be a huge factor. They will have to consider: do we pick Nawaz? Do we pick Noman Ali? What are we going to do? Are we going to go with Agha Salman, who just scored 55 in the tour match, right? But I think Sri Lanka have headaches about they're so good. All of these are so good. I don't know which one to pick. Pakistan is this one's good. The rest, we'll have to see. Right? Noman Ali, the guy I've raved about for about a year and a bit, about a year, let's say about a year since the South Africa series last year. I thought, okay, he's got something really cool in him. I like him. I like him. Thing is, in spin friendly conditions slash flat pitches in Pakistan, he was pretty much ineffective, right? The Australian batters took him for runs upon runs, and it wasn't his fault. He was bowling well. He just wasn't getting the purchase that you expect from a left arm off spinner, someone like Prabhat Jayasuriya, someone like Lasith Embuldinia, right? Someone who is able to extract from any sort of dust bowl. Unfortunately, the Pakistani spinners weren't able to do that against Australia. I think Sri Lanka is going to be a really, really tough go for them. I'm going to ask you this: if you had a choice to make out of the spinners, not Pakistan, Sri
Oh,
Lanka, Sri Lanka, who would you go for? Because I'm trying to construct their potential spin lineup, and I can't. I genuinely can't because whichever spinner they bring in, quality and has got confidence at the moment. So what do you do? What does Sri Lanka do, actually?
yeah, it's a tough one. I actually have got a follow-up question
Hmm.
because I want to play the Uno reverse card in tonight's show.
Oh
But in
yeah.
terms of Sri Lanka's spin attack, a fully fit Sri Lankan spin attack, Lasithan Bordenia is the number one name
Mhm.
on that team sheet. He's tall, he generates extra bounce, he gives it lots of revs. Ideal spinner for Sri Lankan cricket. In terms of the second spinner, this is the $1 million question, isn't it? Because you've got two players with a surname beginning with J, both who had outstanding debuts. In fact, if you take their figures between them, 23 wickets on Test debut between Jaiwit Rama and Prabhat Jayasuriya. Who do you go with? Who do you go with? And I suppose we'll find out when they actually announce the squad. Because
Mhm.
Praveen Jaiwit Rama, in my view, I think he's got a massive ceiling.
Mhm.
Very, very impressive. Gives it a lot of turn. And I love that from spin bowlers who just give it a rip and are very, very aggressive. But then again, given the fact that he did test positive for COVID, if he isn't back to full fitness in time, you've got a guy who's just taken 12 wickets on debut.
Yeah.
So I think it'll come down to that. If Sri Lanka are happy with Jaiwit Rama's fitness, I think
Mhm.
they'll go with Lasith, and I think they'll go Jaiwit Rama. If they're not happy, I think they'll go with Embol Denier again. He's the obvious one, the common denominator for the Lions. And then I think they'd go with Jai Saraya. But again, only time will tell. It's going to be such an interesting decision. It
Yeah.
really is because you've got, I think, as I said, Jaiwit Rama, very good young spin bowler. But at the same time, you've got Jai Saraya. He's just taken 12 against Australia. Which one do you go with? It's an interesting one. If he's fully fit, I'd go Jaiwit Rama. But talking of spinners, Asjad, this is where I come onto the question and I
Yeah.
flip the script
Mhm.
because I've been debating this actually on my live streams recently when it comes to Pakistan's spin attack.
Yeah.
Who do you go with between Mohammad Nawaz, Noman Ali, and Yasir Shah? I think you're going to go Yasir out of the two left arm spinners, considering that Nawaz isn't a massive turner of the ball. Who do you
Mhm.
go with?
Really tough question. And the thing is, because I also need to consider Pakistan's batting in this case, right?
And that's
If
the
they're,
argument I raised.
yeah, it depends on who they pick with the bat. If they're going to go with, again, it's just a thought, and I'm just going to check and confirm if what's his name? Yeah, Fahim Ashraf's in the squad. So if Pakistan goes with Fahim Ashraf, they're not going to go with Nawaz. But if Pakistan doesn't go with Fahim, then they go with Nawaz. That's how I see it. So for me, it's not a Nawaz Numan dispute or a decision. It's more of a Nawaz Fahim decision that Pakistan will be making. Numan, because he's been in the side pretty much consistently since his debut, I think Pakistan will stick with Numan and they're going to go in with Yasir Shah. And they're going to say, okay, so Hassan Ali's had a horrendous form, but when he played in the UK, we played in the county championship, he was doing a pretty good job, right? So let's go with Shaheen, Hassan, and then let's decide on the day about the pitch conditions taking into consideration. Do we go with Nawaz, Numan, Yasir as our spin lineup, or do we go with Fahim as our third baser, and then the other two?
What about
You're
Fawad
like the
Alam?
thing is, Fawad Alam doesn't bowl that much anymore. Even though I
He
really
should
like,
do.
he should. If you remember, you might have been too young, but if you remember when Fawad Alam debuted, Ravinder Jadeja debuted around the same time, and they were both very similar kind of bowlers. Jadeja was a bit more aggressive with the bat, but they were similar types of players. But over the years, even if you look at Fawad Alam's first class record, he bowled a bit. He just didn't bowl that much because his batting got so much better that they're like, yeah, he doesn't need to bowl. So he's become, rather than an all rounder, he's more of a batsman who bowls sometimes. And for some reason, Babar Azam doesn't like to give him the ball that much. He has given him the ball a couple of times when he's, what is it, fifth change, right? Even after Babar Azam, right? Which doesn't make sense to me. But again, it is what it is. The other option is Agha Salman, who is a very young prospect. Salman Ali Agha is what his name used to be. It changed over the course of the last few years. Sorry. I remember him in the first class setup. I remember him in the one day tournaments, in the national T20. Not so much in the PSL, but he's a very, very exciting prospect. Aggressive batsman, can bat anywhere. Usually bats between 5 and 7 in domestic cricket. You probably know better than I do, but he's very, very aggressive batsman. He could be that number 6 batsman that Pakistan potentially needs, right? If Pakistan does go with, for the sake of argument, I'm just saying for the sake of argument, they go with Shan Masood, Abdullah Shafiq. You're like, where's Imam ul Haq? I'm just saying for the sake of argument, all right? Right? Shan Masood, Abdullah Shafiq, Azhar Ali, Babar Azam, Fawad Alam, Agha Salman at 6, and then you have uh, uh, Mohammad Rizwan at 7. Then Pakistan could go, okay, we could go Noman, Hassan, Shaheen, and Yasser, and that could work quite well too. But I don't think they'll debut Al Salman in the first test. If they do consider this option, I think that'll be the second test. But it's a very valid point because the batting decides the bowlers for Pakistan right now. Because if they do lose quick wickets, yes, we can potentially survive, but we don't have a Bracewell, right? Let's put it
Mm.
that way. What Bracewell did a couple of days ago against Ireland, we have Fahim Ashraf who can do that. We have Mohammad Nawaz who could do that. So it's a very tough call. I would personally, if I had a choice, I would go. I would play Fahim Ashraf because what he's done with the bat for over a year and a half for Pakistan since New Zealand, I think. New Zealand 2020. He's been pretty darn important. His average is in the high 30s or the low 40s, something like that, over the past year and a half. So I would go Fahim, and then I would go Noman, Hassan, Shaheen, and Yasir Shah if I were to make that call. But it's really tough because Pakistan has not been able to produce the spinners that you'd expect from an a subcontinent team. Let's put it that way, right? Yasir Shah was the last great spinner Pakistan had, who was great for 2 years, and then when Pakistan shifted to Pakistan, he has his moments. Obviously, a lot of players, if they have quality, if they have skills, they'll have their days. It's just the consistency that they lack, which is kind of annoying. And for Pakistan, you remember we were excited about Sajid Khan, Numan Ali because of what they did in the Qaid Azam Trophy. But number one, different types of pitches. Number two, different caliber of opposition. That is absolutely crucial. These guys are going to know how to play spin, which is why if you have someone with the I know leg spin isn't a mystery, but someone who can spin it both ways. Let's put it that way, right? You have has a decent googly. He doesn't turn the ball too much, Yasir Shah, but he does. It does rush onto the batsman sometimes, depending on the type of pitch they're playing on. So for me, I know I've rambled on for a while because it's Pakistan and it automatically happens. But I think Pakistan will have to go with Yasir and Noman. If Noman doesn't do anything, then they'll consider bringing in Nawaz. But Fahim Ashraf, for me personally, would have to play because of what he's done with the bat. Pakistan needs lower order strength against a team like Sri Lanka.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, to be honest, Asjad. I think, again, it does depend on conditions. As you said, if the pitch is really spin-friendly, then you can make an argument to play all of them. But
Yeah.
I think Yasir Shah, this is a big series for him, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
It really is. But something which he does have is consistency. He just puts it on that penny piece, doesn't he? And he's got a very potent leg break, which is something which, again, we're not seeing so much in Test cricket anymore.
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, we saw this in the England-Pakistan series in 2020. Shadab Khan has
Yes.
he's almost the picture of the modern day leg spinner. He was
Yeah.
64% googlies.
Yeah.
So he is very old school in terms of his approach. Is Yasir Shah, but as you said, spinning it both ways, the occasional googly, almost as a mystery weapon. He's got a good top spinner as well.
Mhm.
This is a big series for him, and it's also a big series for Babar Azam, who averages 60 against Sri Lanka, but has
Yeah.
never toured the island. So this is another pretty big test for him as Pakistan skipper.
Yeah, and that's another point that I wanted to raise. Babar Azam, his captaincy, what he did against Australia, how will he be feeling after a test series loss at home? Um, on top of that, let's hope there's no other COVID outbreaks, all right? Because yes, I said Shan Masood and Abdullah Shafiq to open, but more likely than not, it's going to be Imam and Abdullah, all right? We all know it's going to be Imam and Abdullah. But I would like to play Shan Masood with what he's done, be it in the Pakistan domestic tournaments, be it freaking in the county champion. All right, before we get into Shan Masood, from my opinion, Shan Masood county championship. Please, Aaron, enlighten us.
Yeah, he's just been outstanding. First player in 2022 to reach 1,000 first-class runs across either division. Just been a revelation for Derbyshire. Just turn after turn after turn, scored a magnificent double century in the earlier rounds as well. It's interesting, isn't it? I do agree. I think there'll be Imam and Abdullah Shafiq who open.
Hmm.
But the county cricket fan inside of me would love Shan Masood to open.
Yeah,
You know, when you've got someone who's in that good a form, and it's difficult to bat in England. It really is. And I know it's county cricket, it's domestic cricket, it's not international cricket. There is a difference with any domestic circuit compared to full international cricket. But everything that Shan Masood has touched in the UK has turned to gold. If by some chance he can play in Sri Lanka, I wouldn't be against it. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough. All I'll say is he's got experience. He is by far the most in form out of the three. Yes, you could talk about Abdullah, but the thing is, they were playing on flat freaking decks, right? Shan Masood was playing in the UK, right, where batting is always hard, and he averaged above 70. Was it? I don't know the exact number, but he was averaging above 70 throughout the county championship. So yeah, definite consideration. Right. Okay. We talked about Sri Lanka. We talked about Pakistan. Just a couple of points I want to ask you before we end the Pakistan Sri Lanka leg of this conversation. If you had to pick one player from either side, who you think, because recently we've seen in test series they choose a both teams have a player of the series rather than having an entitled player of the series, which is something that's really refreshing. I think that's pretty good that both teams get that one player. So if you had to pick a player from both sides as their player of the series, who would it be?
Well, I think this is going to be very obvious. I'm a spin bowler. So, as much as I do think Babar Azam, of course, I mentioned that it's his first time touring Sri Lanka. It's a big series for him. And of course, in terms of the other factors, the World Test Championship and that series defeat to Australia, his captaincy style as well, there are a lot of questionings surrounding Babar heading into this series. I do think he'll have a good series. Personally, I back him against Sri
Mhm.
Lanka. So, I won't choose Babar. I've already said him, Yasir Shah. It's a huge series for him. Recently, he has struggled in Asian conditions. If these pitches are spin conducive, which hopefully they will be, I think he will be the potential man of the series for Pakistan because he can turn it both ways. He's an absolute menace with that leg break. And again, we talk about experience. Yasir Shah has that in abundance. He's not going to go searching for wickets. He's not going to lose his shape. He's not going to lose his line and length. So, for that reason, I'm going to go for Yasir Shah, and I sincerely hope that for his sake and for Pakistan's sake, he has a strong series. On the flip side of that, because we don't actually know the Sri Lankan squad as of yet, I
Mhm.
won't choose Jaiwit Rama or Jai Surya because we don't know who's going to play. But if he is playing in this series, Lasith Bordenia is the man to watch.
Oh
He
yeah.
really is. From a bowling perspective, and I've mentioned it beforehand, he's tall. He generates extra bounce for a spin bowler, which on these spin conducive wickets is massive because it could be the difference between missing the edge and drawing a top edge. So for that reason, I'm going Lasitha and Bordenia, and I cannot wait for the spin battle between these two sides. If you want my personal opinion, I think Sri Lanka are stronger in that department. I think they have got the advantage in terms of spinners. But then in the seam departments, if there is a little bit early on, you've got to say Pakistan do have them beaten there. So I'll go Lasith. I will go with Yasir Shah. And again, as Jada say, every single series, but may the best team win.
Yeah, and I hope that's Pakistan. Um, that's a wonderful place to end. I was going to ask you predictions, but there's no point. We never predict correctly,
No,
so there's no point. Just final points I want to touch upon. If you know, please answer this question: where can we watch this series in the UK?
I don't actually know yet. I would assume it's Masala on
Mm,
Sky. I would
really?
assume, but I
Okay.
don't know. So again, we might have to find that out at another time, Asjad, but I'm hoping it's on there. I
Yeah.
sincerely hope it is.
I do too. I know in Sri Lanka it's on Sri Lanka's YouTube channel. In India it's going to be Sony Networks.
Yeah,
Pakistan is going to be PTV Sports and 10 Sports, etc. But yeah, I've been trying to find this out. But anyone in the comments, if you know, please let us know. Where can we watch it in the UK, in the US, and Australia? Or you could just get a VPN and just watch it in Sri Lanka, right?
yeah, you could.
You
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just do that. All right, fantastic. Thank you, Aaron. Really appreciate the time. Thank you everyone for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Do check out the Cricket Concert on every single platform online. Right? He is absolutely brilliant. He comes on my channel so much and helps me out every single week. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And until next time, everyone, take care. Let's shift our focus towards Sri Lanka and Pakistan.